Hi, viewers. I am thrilled to welcome to the Changemaker series Debra Bartholomew. The pause was I'm trying to figure out exactly how to introduce Debra because there's so much to Debra that I want to say behind that name. Debra is a doctor with a special interest in ophthalmology, which is the study and the treatment of eyes. She is an artist. She literally does commissioned works as well. So when I say artist, not an artist like who paints for me, but an artist who people recognize and value. She is a parent of two boys. Her younger boy, is 14 years old, and his name is Adrian. And her older boy is 17 years old. He is in sixth form, so he's about to write part of his upper school exams. There'll be one more year of exams before university time. And his name is Rowan. And he is a part of the reason that I wanted to talk to Debra today. And that's because he's an autistic boy, but there's so much more to him too, as I will let Debra show us as this interview continues. So welcome, Debra.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased.
It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be asked.
I'm so excited about doing this interview because, as you all can see from this shot of Debra, Debra is not a typical doctor. Debra is always enjoying your life, making sure your life is full. And more, the theme that's underlying everything that I try to do is I try to tell people you might be living through some big challenges, but many people, they may not be walking your particular path, but they are living their own challenges and they may be huge. It's not about comparing what we're going through. But the secret to life is saying, despite these challenges, I'm going to find a way to live in joy and fulfillment every day. And so that's one of the things that I see shining out of the way that Debra lives and out of the work she does. We haven't spoken much, but that's what I've picked up from the interactions I've seen with Debra and from the few times that we have communicated. So, Debra, I'm looking forward to shining that light so bright for other people to see.
Thank you so much. There was a time when I didn't see any light. I think as a lot of us, especially women, we've grown up being told that we are not enough, and being compared and that kind of thing. And of course, a lot of our young people these days with social media, they see a fictional view of what life should be. But I think I literally had to take a step back. And it's good that when you have a village, that village of people surrounding you, and they remind you. And I said to someone, I said, it's okay if sometimes you look in the mirror and you don't see enough. It's okay, because that mirror sometimes jades your impression of yourself. The real mirror is the reflection of yourself in people's eyes and in people's hearts. That's a real reflection. So I kind of started because I really literally hated seeing that person in the mirror, and started really living through just trying to be a better person, and also just trying to make the world a better place where I could help. So I went from when my younger son before he was a year old, my family went to India to live, and it was rough because I went from working to not working. And Rowan had actually just been diagnosed a month before, so autism was still very, very new to me, and I just found myself reeling, you know. So I started. What made me plant my feet on firm ground was trying to make myself present in everything, in terms of for my boys at school, you know, just trying to be more present in terms of school activities or life or whatever, not just let everything just happen or float by, and becoming solution oriented. So that part, you know, has been, I think, the part that has kept me going.
It's interesting because I hear solution oriented, and what came to mind is it that you mean stop grousing and stop being negative and take some power in your hand and say, okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I think, look, I was told when Rowan was diagnosed that he may not be able to speak, he may not be able to um, run around or play like other children, he may not even be able to go to a normal school, you know, his life may be attached to me. And, you know, I heard so many, he may not be able, but I didn't really hear what autism was. And all you're telling me is the things that my child will not be able to do. So tell me what autism is, and I'll be able to see how I can support. But I didn't even know how to support because all you're telling me is negative things. So that's when I started to read. And the more I read, the more I thought, and I think I was given the right aid at that time. The right aid, and also I was sent to the right place. So the psychologist sent me to the Life Center, and the Life Center was at the time for kids with global delay. And they basically said, no, this is not the place for your child. You know, continue with the school that he's at for now, and we'll send someone to be with you, see what the classroom or the school setting is like. And this person said, and her name is Teresa Blaze, and Teresa said, I'll call you at the end of the week. I'm going into school and I'll be observing, and then I'll call you at the end of the week and tell you what my findings are. And she called me that same night and said, I need to speak to you urgently in the morning. And when I went back to the Life Center, she told me that what tantamounts, what I have seen is that your child is basically being neglected. It's abuse, because no one speaks to him for the day, and they speak negatively about him. And so in a month, she set about educating more, him, yes, but educating them more. And they saw her interaction and saw how he responded. And in that, she taught me, you know, and she opened my eyes to what the possibilities could be.
The amazing thing that I saw, so my daughter was brain injured at 8 months. Somebody pulled a tube, she got out, and she flatlined. And she became brain injured. The doctors, after 2 months, found that it was a severe brain injury, said that all the senses had been lost and all the ability to suck and swallow, and she and their led to them making, we advise you to withhold food and allow her to go. That was one recommendation we had. The other recommendation was, well, if you all don't want to listen to that, our advice is put her in a home and move on with your life, because your life is going to be very hard. That's just crazy, right? But when you're living in a day, you do not get angry when people see things like that. You're really just
Yes.
calm and trying to figure out where.
Numb. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And at that point, and I think it's interesting, at that point, your intuition is what tells you what to do. For me, intuition is good guidance when I don't know what to do. And what I realized, just like you, is if my hope dies for my child, that's when she will not do anything.
That's right.
I didn't know that those were the words. It took me years to be able to recognize the message.
Mm-hmm.
Had we believed that there was no hope, she would be a
Mm-hmm.
veteran today because we
Mm-hmm.
were in a bed.
Yeah.
You know, so yes, our children may be very hurt. Yes, our children may not look normal compared to anybody else. The question remains, what is normal? Because there's a continuum of humanity.
Of course.
Not a
Of
continuum
course.
of special needs. There's a continuum of humanity. And we all live through it. Changing the view to not the continuum of special needs, but the continuum of humanity, to inclusion, to respect, to connection, outside of the otherizing labels. That's part of the utopia that I dream of. And more, I'm listening to parents, I'm listening to doctors who get it and who are making their purpose
Yeah.
for that message. So that would be one of my reasons having written Lighting the Path. And it is to light the path, it is to show that instead of being a hurt child, M actually is a little child. Just lying there in that bed. That's the biggest lesson
Yeah.
coming from that little child, that she can live in purpose and joy every single day.
Definitely.
Perceive her as having lost so much, and that's shaping the perception I have. I don't see her as broken anymore. I just see her as
I
different.
agree.
And
Yeah.
when I look at Rowan and you doing your interviews on your Facebook page, singing together, talking about experiences, that's what I see too. I see yet another display of how people, our special needs children are, how resilient they are, and how much they radiate hope and love. It seems that that is what is happening now.
Yes.
There's something that really interests me, especially in you, and that is that you're a doctor and a special needs parent.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, that's a dichotomy to me.
Yes.
A doctor is trained to be scientific. A doctor is told statistically, here's what autism is, here's what effects for an autistic person would be,
Mm-hmm.
here's the likelihood of recovery, here are the different sensory issues, and you're going to find them falling on this range. Here's how to identify where on the range they fall in many different ways. Here's what you need to practice. Here's what you need to dive. So I want to start there without talking about the parent side.
Mm-hmm.
Before you became a special needs parent, what did the doctor you perceive autism as, and how would you have spoken to a parent whose child had been diagnosed with autism?
Well, I mean, autism wasn't something that was spoken about with much positivity. So, you know, all I knew, I didn't know exactly what it entailed in its entirety, but I knew that those who were diagnosed with autism had a definitely hard road ahead of them. But what they made it seem like in our and this is not talking to the pediatricians, and certainly not the developmental pediatricians, because the developmental pediatricians have an entirely different view of autism altogether, and certainly many of the pediatricians do. You know, they are not doom and gloom, right? But in those days, it was all doom and gloom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and negativity. It was never painted in a bright light, and certainly, I didn't even think of my experience with persons who had Down syndrome, because my family being from Cocorite, we were familiar ever since I was a child with persons who lived in the Lady Hojoy home and who had Down syndrome. But again, they were never really painted in a bright light, you know. And I've seen where countries are advocating for, if you find out that if your child has Down syndrome, to abort. I don't anyway. But you know, it was never something that was painted in a bright light. So from my perspective as a medic, all I saw was difficulty. And certainly, if someone had come to me with an autistic, and not necessarily just a child, because I've seen autistic young people, I braced myself for difficulty. Like if I had to take blood or do anything or explain anything, I braced myself for that experience to be yes. And certainly when I was in the UK and I was working in the pediatric clinic, any patient who came that was different or special needs in any way, I braced myself, and you know, for it being a difficult experience, a challenging experience.
And that's true. It is a challenging experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what you were experiencing. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it is valid. I guess because you didn't have the other side,
Mm-hmm.
you had to
Certainly.
empathize with what this person might have been, what the parent might have been going through
Mm-hmm.
for a lifetime with this child.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
So from the doctor side and from the scientific treatise that you would have learned, what happened when you became a parent of an autistic child? Shifted for you?
Well, like you said, you hit the nail on the head with the numb part. I mean, I remember that distinctly, being totally numb. And what jolted me was when we left the office. My then husband says, I always thought autism was those people with Tourette's who would cuss, and he made a joke of it, and that literally shook me. And I remember glaring at him, because I thought, this isn't funny. You know, this is our child.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm never going to. I was grateful that he had that response, because I promised that I was never going to have that response where I ridiculed my child. And that night I started to read, and that is what I think, because I had that drive to find out more. My mom picked up the banner, and so Mom and I would often trade information. As a matter of fact, I often tell people that she became my research assistant, and Mommy didn't finish primary school, which is all the more amazing. And she would often send me articles that she read, or stuff that she'd seen on the internet, or news articles or whatever. She would send to me and say, they said to try this, do this, or whatever. So that helped a lot, knowing that it was one person, but knowing I had that one person.
You were not alone, because
yes,
isolation is a heck of a thing in this journey. Yeah.
That's right. And you know, often you're told that give up, as you were told, give up. Why are you fighting? This is what it's going to be like. He's never going to amount to anything. He's never going to this. So you literally feel hopeless. You feel isolated in your hopelessness, and also you feel as if you're made to feel as if you're in denial. Um, but it's not denial. It's not denial, not by a long shot. I think just the same way every single parent wants the best for their child. You just want your child to uh, attain their full potential, whatever that potential is.
Yeah.
Um, and that's I think that's what drove me, you know. And just not to I think it was not good enough to just wallow in ignorance. I could not let a life just waste away because I chose to be ignorant. It must not. If it is that I through reading I found out that there was no way to help him, then fine.
You would
but
come to
but
us,
I, but
come to us.
cannot, yeah,
Right.
yeah, it couldn't be because of me, that his life would amount to nothing.
Yeah. Something that was very, very hard for me to deal with
Hmm.
is my son. He was always, I am this left-brained, very logical daughter of two teachers.
Hmm.
And I say daughter of two teachers because these were two teachers who is to set out their whole schema work for the term and their lesson plans for everything. So it was very structured.
Hmm.
And so I set out a lesson plan for my son's life when he was little. I studied the developmental stages. I knew what the next one was. I knew what the statistical time frame was to go through this stage. And I was carefully managing. Okay, so he's 6 months old now. He should be about ready to do this. Oh, he's doing it a month ahead of time. Yes, we win in this race. I didn't realize that they I was self-congratulating myself because he was ahead of the curve. And he was
Hmm.
reading early and he was physically active and fine motor skills were coming into place. Gross motor
Hmm.
skills come in whenever. Spot on and managing it. I had charts on the wall with words, all the AR words. So FK, pa, whatever, whatever. And my son knew how to read everything. And that's cool. That's not a bad thing. But it becomes a bad thing when you feel that that's the only way.
Yeah.
And because that was the person that I was, you see, academic performance was the measure of if you are a good person. That's what I had
Yeah.
grown up with. And so I was trying to help my child because that was my equation for life. And then I had a brain child who couldn't see, who couldn't hear, who couldn't speak, who couldn't move her finger. And where were the developmental stages at that point? That totally threw me because I felt all hope was lost. All hope was lost. I cried. I lived in this dark place.
Yeah.
Went to sleep saying, God, you wake me up in the morning, please. I don't know how to handle this pain. I feel like I'm feeling my child and my family. And then when you say you wake me up in the morning, you're judging yourself for that too because it means you're a cup out
Yes.
and you don't know which one,
Yes.
right? You're guilty no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Takes a long time to work through that because it's a really heavy psychological issue, especially when, in my case, it was husband and I, but he had his own heavy burden to carry. So how was I going to say, let me tell you all that I'm worrying about? So I'd keep it to myself. I'm glad that you said that you had your mom.
Hmm.
Um, I think I had him, but he was pretending to be tougher, and I was pretending to be
Hmm. Hmm.
because we were helping each other by doing it. I was the reader, he was the lover. He would hold Emma and he would love Emma, and I would research.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
I needed to walk that path to recovery, right? Because in my head, my child was broken and I needed to fix her. That too is something that evolves your perception of your child
Yes,
as a
yes,
broken
it
person.
does.
Um, and nothing is wrong with you if that's what you see. I think that's human. I thank God that
Definitely.
reached further than there right now, because I can see what I wish for her. I can see that I wish that she'd be able to walk, that she'd
Mm-hmm.
be able to hold a spoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see how far she's come. She feeding is no longer something we can put food in her mouth and she can swallow. But you see perfection in who she is.
That's right.
That's a big joy to
Yeah,
not have the constant comparison to what I wished. I wish
yeah.
for this child. That's what I wish for.
It's a process too, because you grieve, and you should be allowed to grieve
And how did
as a
you
parent.
handle it?
Um, I I remember. I think I grieved continuously. I think it was, a non-stop process for a long time. And
Mm.
I think every time he got rejected from a school, I would go through that process again. Um, I I hated my biggest dislike was when children were rough. You know, I think as parents we have a responsibility to teach our children to be tolerant, and kids can be really really mean. So that was
What
huh?
do you when a child suffers, do you feel that maybe the parent is the precursor of that, in that the parent doesn't understand tolerance, so they can't teach it?
I think mostly, I think so, mostly because I think children tend to um, mirror what they see. And I remember teaching my boys, telling my boys all the time, they are enough. They need to know that they're enough. And but I wasn't doing that. I was saying it, but I wasn't doing it. And I saw both my boys mirror my behavior in theirs, regardless of what I said. So I think it's important because we have to be really clear what message we send. Because often we send one message, but then we say things like, "Oh, look at this! Look at her, how fat!" or he's gay, or we have to be really really careful the message that we send to children, because it could confuse them.
Yeah.
But I that was for me one of the hardest challenges, and I remember crying a couple of times. And one book that helped me a lot when Rowan was younger and we just moved to India was a book called A Cup of Comfort, and a cup of comfort for parents of children with autism.
Okay.
And one of the stories was this boy who was autistic and who hadn't gone to school for some time, and the mom just became more and more down because nobody even asked, or inquired about him or whatever. And then one day, this boy, she's outside watering her plants, and this boy is riding by on his bicycle, and he asks about her son. And she said, "Well, he's inside and whatever." And he says, "Well, I've missed him. Can I come in and see? Can I come in and talk to him and play with him?" And she's blown away, and of course she says yes. And he comes in and they play for the entire afternoon, and then he asks if he can stay over for supper. And he came every single day to play with her son, and that gave me hope that my son will find someone. He will find his space. He will find his clique, because often you think that your child will be alone. And that is I think one of the biggest things you grieve as a parent is that your child will be alone, or will not have someone who will love them or take care of them, especially when you are no longer around. And that would keep me up late at night. So that would really help me.
That was my cause of the crying jokes for me.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that happens when you have a child diagnosed with a special need or born with a special need is that many aspects of your life that definitely used to be balanced suddenly fall away.
Yeah.
You can't manage everything else. You have to drop everything almost.
Yeah.
And one of the first things you drop is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How did
That's
you
true. Well, I was living abroad shortly after Ron was diagnosed, like I said. So it was rough. In the beginning, I used to spend half day at school every day.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for, I think, a month or almost a month. And in the beginning, I had, for the first week and a half, I think or 2 weeks, I had my younger son with me, because where would I leave him? And then I got someone, and she would take care of him. But my mind was torn, because I'm there for my older, but my younger needs me. He's only a year, you know. And then you just fling yourself into everything. So I became obsessed with support, management, and helping him to function. And one good thing, I think, for being abroad was that there was a group of women who, I think it was all of us whose kids were attending the same school. And they call this group hopping bunnies. And so you hopped from one house to the next every Wednesday. And you allowed the kids to play. And the moms would get together. So it was time for you, and it was necessary, you know, and often it became my only time. And I remember asking my ex if I could have just some time just to get a massage, because I was so tired. And I'm telling you, it was from 6, because India has a lot of traffic. So it was from 6 until whatever time he came home at night, sometimes 9 o'clock, sometimes 10 o'clock. And those days, still to some extent, Rowan had a lot of insomnia. So it was tough. And I did the school runs, and sometimes I volunteered at school. And like I said, I used to be in school. And then of course I have my 1-year-old. So it was tough. And it was in India that I started painting, just to have that release, just to have that catharsis. I painted more to give away as gifts, but even in that, I felt the release. So yeah. But it is important as a parent, and we're made to feel guilty as parents for having just a little moment to ourselves.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be, because you can't pour from an empty cup, you know, and a lot of parents are just that.
True. And for those of you who say, yeah, that makes sense, it's more than just sense, because scientific studies have been done to show that caregivers, they run themselves ragged, right?
That's right. My son, when he was 7 or 8, God, he used to do some research, and he said to me, I read that parents of children with autism live shorter lives than those without. And I just looked at them and said, well, you know, that's what studies are for. And look at what happened to me a couple of years ago, you know. And it's stress, that's mostly stress related. So you really do need to take a step away sometimes and just be able to breathe and be not made to feel guilty because of that.
Yeah.
Because we're human. We're a different kind of human, but we're still here.
As a parent, deciding to take time off is one thing. Figuring out who's going to look out.
How? Yeah.
To give you that time is quite another.
That's right. That is right.
I know, I mean, I've known for years, Marsh, you need to reconnect with your husband. Relationship is, I describe it as two ships in the night. He sees about it, and then when he sees his work, I stop my work and I go in to do that. And we just move to the next thing on the plate.
Yeah.
And we pass while making the whole mechanism of life run.
Yeah.
So relationships get
affected. Yeah.
Our own well-being, our own ability to just release stress is affected in serious and in long-term ways. In Emma's case, when she was brain injured, she stopped being able to sleep. She might sleep for 2 hours a day, 2 hours a night. No day sleeping, just 2 hours a night, and she's waking up all the time because she can't turn. So you have to be there to turn her, to put her, to hold her, to walk, etc. Lifting has an effect on your back, on your legs, on your mental health. And so there is such fallout, right?
Yeah.
And my joke is, you know, how does the US punish the worst prisoners? How they keep them from sleeping? This is Guantanamo Bay we're living in here, right? But it's not, when you are outside of my house, you just say, oh, those people, they have a sick child, they have a special needs child. You really don't know the ins and outs.
That's right. That's right.
What that family down the street is going through. When you lift in your weights outside and slamming it down on the ground, and it causes the child to get a minor heart attack, or when your girlfriend pulls up and pressing the horn at 11 in the night.
Gosh, noise, yes.
Sleep,
yeah.
Wakes up and she's not going to go to sleep till 6 a.m. People don't realize what little things could be caused in other people.
Yep, totally.
And that in turn has an effect on your health.
Yeah.
That's your stress. Yeah. So what about your health? How did the whole journey impact on your health and well-being?
Well, my job as well as an intense one, but I remember being told when Rowan was 7 that a major player in the journey with autism is anxiety. And when she said anxiety, I said, what do you mean anxiety? As in anxiety, like the anxiety that I know, that because I dealt with panic attacks for years. And she said, yes. And I was like, I don't want that for my child. That was the first time and only time I was in denial. I said, I do not want that for my child. I know what that is like, living with anxiety every single day. And that in turn caused me great anxiety. I think my living abroad too, with and being away from the support has been rough. You are the person who deals with the meltdowns. You are the person who deals with the challenges. You are the person who deals with the insomnia. It was really, really rough. And yeah, my body did break down from time to time. I got gallstones, which are common, well, fairly not uncommon, in especially when you have a pregnancy and then you lose weight rapidly, right? And but what I didn't realize was that stress in itself, and it wasn't just stress surrounding him, but stress of a job and stress of managing him and a job full time. And sometimes I would have them with me when I'm in the hospital and that kind of thing. And so I didn't realize that would exacerbate my gallstones, to the point that I had to have surgery. And then a couple of years ago, I had a brain bleed. And I understand totally what your daughter, not totally, but I understand what your daughter's going through, because my mom used to want me to sleep, and I could only sleep a couple of hours. As a matter of fact, I only slept because of the medication in the beginning, And but after that, I told myself that, and certainly after I lost my sister the year after. And she was like my boy's second mom. So when she died, that it wasn't a wake-up call, it shattered, as Rowan says, his world has been blown to smithereens. And that's because you always feel as if a part of you feels as if you have somebody, especially, I mean, if you're a single parent, it's different, but a part of you feels like if you have somebody to depend on, and my parents are in their 70s. So you realize, oh my goodness, how am I going to balance this? I really do have to take care of myself. I have to take care of myself, and I have to take care of these boys. So I tried as much as possible to make self-care a part of our entire lives. So they understood what it was. So the younger one, he has his water polo, or whatever he has, he plays his game or whatever. All that is part. And I talk about mental well-being and the importance of caring for your mental state is really, really important. And I think people they underestimate that burden that parents of special needs kids carry around every day.
And the mental state has been linked to affecting your physical state. So
that's right.
So I asked you before if we could do a second interview where we would actually talk about diabetes specifically, and how we can have a positive impact. And I'm not going to say reverse or any such thing, but my personal thing is I believe that we can. There's a saying from Hippocrates, I think, that food be thy medicine. And I've learned that with diet, and that means if we learn what a good diet is, and
that's right,
we can become so much healthier and stronger.
Oh, definitely.
So I know that I can talk on and on because this is such I don't know, we just I love hearing that you are sharing. But I want to just end with one more question. If you had to give advice to a parent who is on this journey or newly starting this journey as a special needs parent, what 3 tips would you give them?
Okay. The first thing is to be open-minded. To approach this journey as one of discovery. Everything is not figured out. In the beginning, when let's take a journey with autism. In the beginning, the puzzle piece was what was the symbol, and that was because we felt, or it was felt, that there was something missing. I still think that the puzzle piece applies to some extent, but I think it's because they are the missing piece of humanity. We are, as you said, We are a continuum, and that's why the infinity symbol is the new symbol, because we are a continuum. I remember saying to my son's teacher, she was teaching him when we were in Libya, and she trained under Tony Attwood, who wrote the Bible on what was called Asperger's. And I remember saying to her, I think I gave my son autism, because I used to be seriously OCD. And she said, we're all on the spectrum in some way. And she's correct. She's correct. So no, don't approach it from the perspective that something is wrong. Approach it from there's this new world waiting to be discovered, you know? And the other thing is, I don't know if you've seen Boss Baby, but I've for a long time, I used to say that parents of kids with special needs are specially chosen. And in Boss Baby, the parent is chosen by the child, the family is chosen by the child. And I never understood why someone who had absolutely no patience whatsoever, none, would, and who, as you said, is a science brain, would be the one chosen to have an autistic child. But I was, and I didn't quite understand what I could bring to the table. But my real, true self is just waiting to just come out, you know? And he's helped that to come out in so many ways. And there are things that every parent has a dream for their child. But we've lived our lives, or we are living our lives, you know? Let your dream for your child be just for them to attain their true potential, whatever that is. So the whole thing about my child has to be a doctor, my child has to be a this, my child has to be a that, I didn't even know what on earth Rowan would be. And his teacher said, let him do sociology. And I was like, what? Why would Rowan do that? It is fascinating to see Rowan learn something so new. I couldn't understand, like I said, why I would be the one to have a child like that. But I'll tell you something. Rowan, he has struggled with, so I didn't realize that sociology was such a difficult subject, and it's not well explained, at least not for, in the textbooks, at least not for teens and sixth form students. And we found this book that was fantastic, absolutely fantastic, written by Mr. Chinapu, and very well explained, and everything condensed in little pockets of information. And he literally is reading that book almost all the time. But still, he found it difficult to write essays, as autistics do. They have a whole load of information, but this tiny little channel through which they can feed the information because they can't process properly. And so we were in a class together, and I had actually asked the parish priest to come and talk about religion in sociology and sociology in religion. And so I wrote down something that we had discussed. We had just discussed this for an assignment. It was about education and how education was before independence and then after independence. And so I wrote down the points that we had discussed, and he looks at it and he's confused. And I said, read it. And he looks at me and he doesn't understand a word I am trying to say to him. And I said, remember, we discussed this before. And so I looked at him and I said, you two have been working something out. Try it now and see if it will work. So everything that I had written down, I took it and I now made illustrations. So, and that's the other thing as a parent, or like I said, always keep an open mind, because this child was using illustrations when he was 4 or 5. He's now 17. Don't think for a minute that, oh God, illustrations, he's too big for that.
Right.
I drew a house on top of, not a house, a school building on top of the poor, oppressing the poor. I drew the rich and the poor, and books showing a divide in between the rich and the poor. And I drew every single thing. I drew a religious school, the building, and a government school, the building, shaking hands. I drew all of that. And he looks at it, he puts up his hand, and he says, Father, in Marxist, what the Marxist theory suggests that institutions are there to oppress the poor. And education has served to further the divide between the rich and the poor classes, because, of course, no one wanted to educate the slaves. That divide, and certainly in colonial times, the rich, and he explained the entire thing just looking at pictures. And that's where I saw my purpose. That's where I saw my purpose. Because had I not been that unique, it may not have worked for the two of us. You understand? So as a parent, know that you were specially chosen to walk this journey. You may not have discovered what your unique gifts are for your child, but trust me, they are there, just waiting to be opened. Approach this journey as one of discovery and never give up.
I have no more. That's truly the foundation how we move forward. Oh, Deborah, this has been enlightening. It's fulfilling to see some of my views reflected in your experiences. One of the things that we always look for is connection. We look for
Definitely.
reflection of our experience in others because that validates us. So I just want to add the one tip for parents who might be looking for is find ways to connect.
Yes.
In my case, I could not find ways to connect physically with people because my child was that hurt that nobody could really care for her. So my husband would go to work, he'd come home. When he came home, I would basically high-five him on the way out, go to work, and work nights. That's how we managed to keep going. So I worked evenings and nights at the university. I changed my working hours. Thank God, because he put things in place that could happen. I was in a traditional engineering job. That job would not have been able to be sustained.
Yeah.
But I found a community of people who fit me online. People who have remained my friends for the past 6 years. It's not a passing connection, a hello kind of connection. It's true, it's deep. We talk about things that hurt us, we talk about things that and we support each other. And because that way, the impact grows. So do not feel that physically, do not feel that your friends or family are no longer coming around since it happened. That it means that you've been able to pull stuff. It means is that you your community is evolving as it should. The right people are being drawn to you.
Yeah.
And it may be painful. I know it was painful for me to lose friends and family. But the right people are going to be drawn to you. And
Yes.
you have an impact on you. Your superpower as a parent is that you first begin with love for your child. And that love all that you need to make it through today.
Totally. I agree with the connection. Your village is out there. Find your village.
Yep. And if you need support, remember that all you need to do is find another special needs parent.
Definitely.
Find Debra, find me, find so many others who are willing, able, longing to make connection with you. At this point, I'd like to just say that Lighting the Path, my book, is out and available on Amazon.
Wow.
Launch is actually next Tuesday, the 1st of June. And I'll be posting, I guess, during this week to let you know what the link is, because I would love to invite people to come to the launch and share in that whole celebration, and see Emmy and see how joyful she is as well. Hear a little bit about our story and some of what the book has to share to shore you up and to build community. We are stronger together.
Certainly.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to us meeting again.
Definitely.